contemporary generations of prompt engineers won't even get what I'm talking about, but back in my day, we used to design user interfaces in specialized software like Figma. And to be frank, you weren't considered a valuable member of the design community if you hadn't created at least one utterly useless Figma plugin with a non-existent user base. So I had no choice but to jump on that rapidly deteriorating bandwagon and make a simple, old-school, pre-MCP era plugin that addressed a very specific issue only I could relate to. You see, I get easily carried away by my thought process, and when I come back to my senses, I often find myself in rather disturbing places. Let's say I have this crazy idea of a drop-down menu scribbled on a napkin. So I spend my entire day meticulously implementing it in Figma, modifying the properties of a drop-down component instance and populating it with data, only to find out that all my struggle was for naught because the menu is in the wrong frame. It's one of those moments when I begin to question all my life choices that led me here. Since the menu is buried deep in a nested interface structure, I can't just copy and paste it elsewhere, and there is no Figma native way to transfer all the properties from one component instance to another. One might argue that under no circumstances should anyone modify instance properties directly inside the layout and that I should always operate at the component level, or at least use instance swap. But everyone's gangster in hindsight. I'm just a human being who wants to copy the damn properties. So, instead of succumbing to a brooding depression each time I wish to pass a couple of properties from one location to another, I vibe-coded a Sense Injector plugin. Now, all I have to do is select the donor instance and click Scan to create a snapshot of its properties. After extracting the properties hierarchy, I select the recipient instance and click Inject to pass the properties to the new host. The plugin searches for familiar nested instances and properties inside the selection and updates them. So, that's it. That's the Sense Injector plugin in a nutshell. But it can also be used in other, not so obvious ways. For example, we have this person card component and we want to use it to render a list of 10 people in our app layout. First, we scan the single card to extract its structure, then switch to the JSON code that contains all the property data, copy the code, and feed it to a neural network of choice. I already prepared a prompt that asks the LLM to generate JSON code for 10 people based on the provided code snippet. When the JSON is ready, we copy it and paste it back into the Sense Injector to create a new snapshot. Now we have an array of 10 people in the plugin storage, which we can apply to a component instance with a similar structure. When we click Inject, the plugin will not only populate the single component with the new properties, it will also create its copies to reflect the snapshot. This also works for hidden nested instances. For example, this ticker dashboard component can display up to 8 tickers. However, the default state contains only 2, and the other 6 are hidden. Let's say we want to use the dashboard to display the social dynamics of 7 deadly sins. We scan the default component instance and feed the snapshot to the AI alongside the prompt. When we inject the generated JSON into the component instance, the plugin will search for hidden children and make them visible if it finds any. But what if we want to add a new scene to the dashboard and place it at the beginning of the list? Editing such an interface can be challenging since Figma does not allow moving nested instances. Instead, we can ask the LLM to modify the JSON structure and then inject it using the plugin. Now we've established a new world order, hassle-free. It's important to note that the plugin does not operate at the layer level. It only sees the list of component properties and their values. Assigning the properties to all the editable component elements can be tedious sometimes, but it is what it is. On the bright side, the layer-agnostic approach allows us to transfer data between different layouts with the same property structure, circumventing the layers entirely. Let's say we have 2 card layouts for displaying personal data, one in a list view and another in a grid view. We can first extract a snapshot of the list layout and apply it to the grid layout. We don't care about the actual layer structure as long as the set of properties is the same. So, before wrapping it up, I should explain how the schema works. Basically, it's a compressed representation of a snapshot. It doesn't show the entire dataset like the JSON code does, but it allows us to get the gist of the snapshot. Also, it lets us specify which of the properties we want to inject. Let's say you've already inserted the correct names in the component instance, so we can toggle the name property off and the plugin will ignore it when injecting the data. And I'll close by saying that the plugin can be a bit picky since it requires an exact match between the structure and the entity names in the snapshot and in the component instance. If there's a discrepancy, it simply won't work. And that's it for today. Now it's time to inject some sense into your bland, senseless, boilerplate component instances. Thank you for your patience.